If you're like most of us, you're dreaming of a white Christmas. And by that, I mean, of course, snow covered all along the ground. Not necessarily Der Bingle and Danny Kaye in some antics up in Vermont. But we will discuss that as we talk White Christmas. Anatomy of a Movie, Retro Anatomy of a Movie, starts now.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies. And now, here's Popcorn Talk's Anatomy of a Movie.
Hey. Well, how's everybody doing? Merry Christmas.
I used to know. What a great song.
I'm never going to try to duet with Bing Crosby, but Alexa Cappiello,
yes, hi.
Who's here with me. I'm Christian Bladt, by the way. Welcome to Retro Anatomy of a Movie. This little pocket of the Anatomy of a Movie universe, in case you don't know, is myself and Alexa watching movies for the first time that typically are movies where people go, huh?
Yeah.
How'd you not see that?
I've never seen that film.
And let's start from there. How do you think it is that you never saw this movie?
It's old.
So am I, but you're looking at me right now.
It's true.
Although you are trying to look away. So.
No. It's old. I used to watch movies with my grandmother. She loved, the old black and white films. Her favorite actress was Vivian Leigh and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So, I guess I missed it. It was just not one of the ones I watched with her, and therefore never saw it. So
yeah, my wife always loved this movie, and she told me it's because when she was a little girl, she and her sister watched it at her grandmother's house, and so there's like the sister song comes up a couple times, so they liked that, and it's just sort of fun. And then of course they grew up somewhere. They grew up in Los Angeles, the Orange County. So they never saw snow. Mm-hmm. So the idea of snow is just this magical, mystical thing that they always liked. Let me ask you a quick follow-up question. Did you ever see It's a Wonderful Life?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's why, because if you hadn't seen that, I'm like, well, you just haven't seen all Christmas movies.
No, I saw that.
Right. And I don't think that was me. I don't know what that computer was, but it sounded good. Maybe even people at home didn't hear it. It sounded like
the Star Wars ride.
Star Tours? The door's about to close.
Doors.
Yeah, Captain Rex is about to take off. So, yeah, and then it was one of those things. I know she loved this movie, and so I just hadn't seen it when I met her, and I was always like, oh, we're going to watch it one of these days.
It's a romantic movie to watch together.
And then I told her, I was like, oh, I got to watch it for this show. And she's like, yeah, I'm busy working. And I'm like, all right. She's like, but it's my favorite movie. I'm like, I know. It's like this. I didn't just meet you. I know how much you like this movie.
Is she going to watch this episode?
Of this? No, she doesn't watch these things that I do. She doesn't have time.
But it's her favorite movie.
Well, that's true. But am I her favorite person to talk about this movie?
I'm probably not going to be her favorite person after we really talk about this movie.
I know, that's some foreshadowing.
There's a little.
So yeah, I just had never seen it. And I always figured I would. My boss, Dennis Miller, loves this movie. He watches it not just every year, but there's always a point earlier in the year, like in the summer or something, where he'll watch it once just to sort of like get that feeling. And I know that a lot of people love it. It's unlike It's a Wonderful Life, it is it's a musical of that era. So the tone and the approach towards storytelling is completely different. It's a Wonderful Life is just this sort of dark, depressing tale where it's like, things are pretty bad, but at least you got some friends. That's like it's at least
Spirit
that
of Christmas is love and blah blah blah.
So this is a little bit of a different story than that. And so overall, one, what did you think it was about? And then what did you think of it once you watched it?
Well, I thought it was a Christmas
Okay, good. Good answer.
film. Actually, I really thought, hence the name and the poster that I remember seeing around
when you were a little girl, 1954.
No. Just in general, sure. I have seen this poster of all four of them in their Santa outfits. I guess I thought it would be more about White Christmas, like more snow. I mean, yes, it was a momentous occasion when the snow actually started falling in the movie, but it really wasn't about snowing very much at all.
So the songs that I knew from this were, of course, White Christmas, and then the song that they all sing about snow, because you'll hear that on your Christmas stations throughout the throughout the Christmas season, maybe the summer too. So those things made me think that they're sort of like, oh, they go up to where the snow is, and then like, you know, like, oh, they're gonna go to Vermont, and then the snow's there, you know.
Right.
So it was not about that.
Right.
And so I was a little surprised in that, they're you know, and I think in my notes I have it. The first time that they have Bing Crosby sing White Christmas.
White Christmas, yeah.
It is 3 minutes into the movie. And I'm like, well, I could probably go home now. Now, just as a little point of historical fact, that song did not come from this movie. It's from a movie called Holiday Inn.
Yep.
Yes. So it was already an established song. So I guess they felt like, well, we can't make people wait 2 hours for that song.
I'm pretty sure they just wanted to make a movie around the song itself. Like, they're like, this song is very popular. Sure. Let's just make Bing Crosby sing it again in a movie, and we'll just write the script around that. I think that's honestly what happened.
I think that's how a lot of musicals get made. Yeah. You know, I mean, not one's based on like Broadway shows or something. It's just like, well, we have these couple songs. Like a perfect example would be any Elvis movie. Yeah. There's 2 songs in it, and it's like, oh, okay, so he has a song about driving cars, so I guess he's a race car driver in this movie. Really? So Elvis is going to be fixing cars? Yeah, it's fine. Nobody's going to have a problem with that. So I know the answer to this, but I think the audience would like to know, what did you think of White Christmas?
All right, so let's start out with the good things. The good things are that I liked that it was in Technicolor. I thought it was very pretty. I loved, you know, as a film nerd, I loved the use of sound stages. The first scene was actually really cool, in my opinion. I was almost 100% on board until the story, in my opinion, took kind of like a nosedive.
Okay, so just to interject, you liked the part that was set during the war.
Yes.
You were all in on the war.
I was honestly, I wasn't expecting it. And then they had Bing Crosby singing White Christmas. And it was really beautifully sung, of course, because he's got a wonderful voice. But you know, the context of it all, he's singing the song during Christmas, or it wasn't Christmas. Was it Christmas? It was Christmas Eve or something like that.
I think it was Christmas Eve, and it was 1944, so it was like pretty close to the end of the war. But obviously, people have been at it for a while, and you were pretty beaten down at that point. Of course,
and it was really emotional. It was a wonderful scene to watch, and I was almost 100% on board, because I was like, oh, cool. Is this like, are we going to tie in the war somehow? Is this going to be kind of like a more historical type of movie? Like, I thought it was going to be more than it actually was, just based on that first scene. But in general, I just I don't know, I was just kind of a little, to be honest, just a little bit bored watching it. I liked the song and dance numbers. I thought what was Vera Ellen? I'm not like super familiar with her.
Yeah, I wasn't either. Yeah.
But I thought that she was, of course, an incredible dancer, and I didn't know very much about Rosemary Clooney either. And
do you know anyone she's related to?
Yeah, George Clooney.
Oh, yeah.
The Clooney's. But so I enjoyed her, but I just didn't like the story. I thought the story was lacking. I mean, it's obvious they didn't really care very much about the story of this.
Right, which that's very much a product of this era of filmmaking.
I was telling you, this movie just reminded me of a cupcake. It was just this white vanilla cupcake with vanilla icing and a bunch of sugar stuff on top, and it was just a cupcake and once you bit into the cupcake, it just tasted sweet and nothing more. Like, it was just sugar. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Like, that's how this movie felt to me. And then also I had a huge issue with not huge, but I didn't like how Rosemary Clooney's character just would not tell Bing Crosby what the effing issue was with her. She just, no, I can't. I'm not going to tell you why I'm mad at you. I'm just going to keep it going for like 5 more weeks.
And like 3 times he's like, I think we should get to the bottom of what the problem is.
I was like, this is so annoying. Just tell him your issue so he could clear it up.
Well, I'm sure, and again, this is from a 1954 perspective. 1954 perspective is just like, oh, well, women. Like that must be like that has to be what that has to be what contemporary audiences thought. Is like, oh yeah, well, she's just, they're not going to want to talk about their feelings. They just have these painful conversations about sandwiches, which I did not feel the same way you did about the movie. But the sandwich, I'm like, all right, we get it. Right. It's enough with the
sandwich.
Yeah. The only thing that I would have liked is at the end when she gives him the knight on the horse ornament. I thought it was like a pound of liverwurst because they were talking about like, well, then you find liverwurst, and I'm like, all right, that's funny, and I'm like, no. I came up with a better sight gag to end the movie. So yeah, and the interesting part of the storyline to me is the sequence you're talking about in the beginning in World War II, and then of course just randomly bumping into the general up in Vermont, which we'll just accept. We'll just accept that because movies there. That stuff happens all the time,
right?
It's fine. So, like, oh, really? Like, Darth Vader catches Princess Leia right above the planet where her dad was born, and this future Jedi is? Okay, great. That's just what happened. So great. That's how things happen. Yeah, this is how things happen. And that was for you, Ryan. But in any case, so you accept that. So, the thing that it makes me think about is something that you see in so many movies, and like we can say that like, oh, we understand, we imagine that that's the case, but it's so apparent just what an important part of everyone's life World War II was.
Oh yeah.
And just the impact it had on people who served. Mm-hmm. And the fact that here's the general who's like, I'm just going to try and re-enlist because
I don't know what else to do.
Yeah, like managing a hotel is not the same. So like, hopefully they can use me. And it's like, well, I'm too old. And just the idea that you can get all these people to be like, oh, well, that guy was our gruff commanding officer. Of course, we'll spend Christmas Eve with him up in Vermont instead of with our families.
Right.
But, and then sort of the sequence at the beginning, especially the moment where Danny Kaye saves Bing Crosby, which is referenced many times. Many times. In a way
he
where
will never be able to live
which
that
is very
down.
funny. I think just he's like, oh, that again, huh? And he's like, he's like, oh yeah, my arm, So it's I don't know. I think subsequent generations after that, you can have things that you point to like, oh, here's a moment or two. I mean, even people, who can point to a terrible day like 9/11, you don't live that the same. I mean, unless you're someone who was there, who survived, talking to someone else who survived. For the most part, it's just like, oh, it's a terrible thing that we saw happen, and President Kennedy being assassinated, things like that. It's not the same. Whereas like World War II was such an important part of everyone's life, whether you had somebody that went overseas or you were there yourself, and just to have it be such an important part of the movie, it's just a reminder of like, yeah, this is like part of everybody, you know? And even this very lighthearted farce about putting on stage shows and TV shows and radio shows, it's, World War II is looming so heavily over it. And it's just always a reminder of like, just what it was, because like we can read all about it in history books, or we can watch documentaries or whatever, and it's just having made this movie in 1954, so like basically 9 years after the war ended, it's like, yeah, remember how terrible that is. I mean, look, It's a Wonderful Life, has huge sequences that refer to the war and how George wasn't there and things like that. So all of this stuff is very important. So it does set a weird tone for the rest of the movie, though. Right,
because it starts off like that, and then it doesn't really do anything with it. It just sort of...
Other than to have this general that they want to feel important, which is very sweet.
Yeah.
And...
Spirit of Christmas, I guess.
And I do understand Bing Crosby. So you want to talk about, Rosemary Clooney not saying, like, why she's mad at Bing Crosby. Well, there's also, like, I understand why you're keeping a secret from the general, but... You can't tell, like, the ladies who are in the show. Like, by the way, there's going to be a moment where, like 50 soldiers are there, and then we'll do our thing.
Right.
So it's like, well, why is nobody talking to each other?
Right.
But It's the 50s, and you know what? Men and women probably didn't talk to each other except about sandwiches.
I guess so, because that's really all they talked about, and then subsequently fell in love. I guess that's it. It was like Pride and Prejudice,
right? But without the zombies.
Yes, without any of the good stuff. It was just like, I don't like you based on one thing you said and my perception of you. I'm confused as to why you don't like me, but I also kind of don't like you based on the fact that you just don't like me. And then they just keep missing each other, and then eventually find each other. I love
the Danny Kaye Vera Ellen relationship, because she's just like, if only there's somebody I could get engaged to. He's like, yep. So
that was cute.
No, that's a cute thing, but then it's like sort of a reminder of Tony Curtis's pretend character in Some Like It Hot, which we talked about last week. It's like, would a modern day woman be like, oh, this guy's gay, he doesn't want to pretend to be engaged to me, because you just didn't think that then.
Right.
And it's like, also, look, plenty of guys don't want to settle down, Right. I don't know how old he's supposed to be in this movie. By the way, Bing Crosby looks like he's in his 60s.
Actually, I know, he looks pretty old, actually.
He looks so much older than everyone else in the movie. And speaking of which, when I was kind of talking to my wife about the actresses, and I was talking about how much older looking. Look, it's a fact. Vera Ellen looks older than Rosemary Clooney. It's like, but she's the younger sister. And I'm like, yeah, but she's clearly older. And I looked it up. She's 7 years older than her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if we want to talk about appearances, when I was watching it with my roommate, who's actually, she's in her like 50s or 60s, and she's watched this movie so many times. And she's just like, I always forget how skinny Vera
Ellen is incredibly skinny, and I guess it's because she's really a dancer.
Yeah, well, there was controversy about it. Anorexia. They said there was some sort of like rumor going around that she would always wear these scarves on her neck just to hide the fact that her neck had lost so much weight. So,
oh boy,
like extra skin or something. And then it was denied later on. But the fact of the matter is,
she's incredibly skinny.
It was talked about.
Yeah,
like,
even then.
Yeah, even then, because she is. I mean,
Rosemary Clooney looks like a normal woman.
Weight,
and which is what you typically don't see on screen. You usually see. I mean, at this time, at this era in 1954, sure you would have, but it's not what you're accustomed to seeing. Whereas you see Vera Ellen modern day, you're like, well, that's what an actress looks like. That's not what somebody in real life looks like. But it's what an actress looks like. So that's interesting. Yeah,
I don't know. I actually thought when I was watching it, I was like, she looks very like too thin. So
right.
I don't know. That was just me though. So
yeah, well, she was definitely too skinny, but then it also,
and the camera adds weight.
Camera does add weight. That's true. So anybody watching right now, this isn't real.
No, honestly, he's not that. Yeah. He's like,
all right, we'll settle down. Let's be careful.
Just kidding.
All right. Yeah. I'm at least half a pound lighter than I look right now. And I don't know. I mean, it's weird because there's like a lot of, maybe it's probably because she's so skinny that she's the one that I thought this about. And I was just like, so has technology and women's undergarments come so far that they actually fit now? Because it seemed like none of the bras or anything she wore like actually like fit her at all. Maybe it's because she was so skinny. Probably. But I was just looking and I was just like they don't have like a different top that could maybe fit her. And I guess maybe it's like when they did her fitting, it fit her, and then it's like, well, now she's skinnier. But
they didn't even look like sisters, her and Rosemary. They didn't look anything alike.
They didn't even look like cousins. They didn't even look like neighbors.
And then, sisters. I'm like, where?
Yeah, it's like, well,
sisters.
Yeah.
And then they did, cross-dressing again with the other the guys. I guess that was like a theme.
There's two things about this movie that made me think of you. One, the cross-dressing.
Yeah.
And two, I was like, oh, Alexa hated this movie. And I was right, by the way, because this is the first thing you told me when he came in.
He knows me well.
Yeah,
I didn't hate it. I know,
but I'm generalizing.
Not my favorite Christmas movie.
Right.
I mean, it was nice. It was the song and dance numbers were fun, and it was the colors. It was, what was it? It was the first VistaVision. So not Technicolor, but VistaVision.
Yeah, and I was actually under the impression I thought that it was a black and white movie that had been colorized. I just think that it's this technique of colorization or filming in color back then. I mean, I know like the earliest color films you had to like hand paint all the frames and things like that, but it has like it doesn't have that vibrant color, like the reminder is always the color sequence of Wizard of Oz, because all the colors are so bright and vibrant in every frame. Well, except for, like the Wicked Witch and stuff. But in even this picture we're looking at right now, those, there's those purples and stuff. You're like, we're going to save some money. We're not going to put anything too bright back there.
Really? I honestly think they spared no expense kind of thing. Like
Well, it's Hollywood. There's always sparing of expense, but I understand what you mean.
I thought they did a good job at least with the visuals. And again, I was very impressed with what they did inside of all those sound stages over at Paramount, especially the war sequence with the wall falling down. Like that was really, really well done. And then, of course, near the end of the film, when it's finally snowing and you see the snow falling and it is a white Christmas,
and then they're able to like open the big barn doors. That was really cool. That part looked great.
Really, really wonderful. Like the visuals and the way it was done back in the day. I thought that was really nice. And if you're watching a Christmas movie with your family and just want something on in the background that has fun songs and music and it's nice to look at, that's the scene that I'm talking about.
So
of course,
you're saying like, just watch the sequence at the end, like where they sing White Christmas and it's actually snowing.
Truth be told, I don't think you need to watch the rest of the film, because I don't even think any of the other songs, except for White Christmas, which wasn't even premiered in this. I mean, it was the first song of the film, but it wasn't initially, and what was the other movie that was in prior? 1942 or something.
Oh, you're talking about Holiday Inn?
Yeah, Holiday Inn.
Well, we've talked a little bit about some of the male-female interactions that, of course, are outdated. This is not... Look, there's times where you see it in movies and you're like, yikes. This one, it's just like, all right, it's just sort of a clunky, awkward way to tell a story, that it's like, oh, those women, oh, those men, if only they could ever come together, and that's basically what it is. I got very nervous, though, when they were about to do a big production about minstrel shows. Especially because in Holiday Inn, there is a sequence in blackface. So I was just like, oh boy, are we having that conversation?
I have not seen this film.
Yeah. So, yeah.
so I couldn't remember. It was like, it was in another movie.
Right, that's the one.
The blackface one.
Yeah, but when they're doing a whole song about minstrel shows, I'm like, oh no. I'm like, that's gonna really, I don't know, look, that really, even in 1954, you'd think like people are like, I don't know. Shall we do this? But 1942, which is when Holiday Inn came out, I looked it up. It apparently, I guess, times were different then, but it doesn't feel as dated as some movies of the era. That's the point I'm making by referencing that. This sequence that you see right here, this is from, I believe, that minstrel show in this movie, in White Christmas, not from Holiday Inn. We don't need to dig up the pictures from Holiday Inn. People can watch that on their own if they want to. But anyway, so you always have these wonderfully detailed notes, and I want to make sure that you get to them before we run out of time.
No, apparently it was supposed to be Bing Crosby and Fred Astaire.
Well, that would make sense. Look, Danny Kaye, by the way. I know him as...
He was the third choice.
Who's the second?
Astaire declined the project after reading the script. What am I saying?
So that's your credit for Fred Astaire, clearly. Yeah.
Ding. Asked to be released from the contract with Paramount.
Yikes, he'd signed a contract.
Yeah, he had signed a contract. So then Crosby left briefly to go because his wife had just died, Dixie Lee. And then Crosby returned to the project, and Donald O'Connor was signed to replace Astaire, but just before shooting was to begin, O'Connor had to drop out due to illness and was replaced by Danny Kaye.
Danny Kaye, who I know as a comedic actor, he did a lot of television.
Vaudeville.
Yeah, I don't know him from vaudeville. I'm not that old.
That's kind of so. But when I was watching him, I was like, he's very. He was kind of like oh gosh, I forget his name from Some Like It Hot that we watched recently.
Jack Lemmon.
Jack Lemmon. Yeah. He was kind of like, in terms of facial stuff. I was like, oh, he's definitely
he's a great comedic actor. Clearly, developed his craft for the stage because you can't be as big on film as you need to be on stage. And he's a great dancer, perfectly fine singer. All of that. It's just he was clearly never going to be a leading man. Like getting to be number 2 to Bing Crosby, who look. not much of an actor, but he has an amazing voice.
Yeah.
You know, so that's all that really mattered. To me, it was fun to see him, you know, do all those big dance numbers. And you mentioning that should have been Fred Astaire. We're like, well, yeah, clearly that's why that's written in there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you have Vera Ellen, who was, you know, we could talk about whether or not she should have eaten more of those sandwiches or not, but she was a great dancer.
Yeah, and I actually was wondering when I was watching it, I'm like, oh, is she a triple threat? Could she act, sing, and dance? Because obviously she's an incredible dancer, but she was not the singer. What's her name? Rosemary Clooney actually was the singer.
Okay.
And she sang both parts in Sisters.
Well, no wonder they
Rosemary
sound
Clooney
like
was
sisters.
a wonderful singer. So it's interesting. So they got a dancer. They got Bing to sing and dance because he's multi-talented. I guess Danny Kaye is a triple threat as well, and then Rosemary. Did I say Rosemary? Rosemary was the singer. So.
Yeah, she as with Bing Crosby, she has an actual, you know, she has a vast library of music. You know? I mean, she has a singing career, not just somebody who was in movies and the songs from movies became popular.
Her backstory and everything like that kind of reminded me a little bit of Marilyn Monroe a bit, with her suffering from depression, abusing pills. I was like, oh wow, it's really heavy to read.
And not to get too bogged down into it, I think that it's the difference can be the people that you are surrounded by. I mean, you have your Marilyn Monroes and your Judy Garlands, and you have other people who have a period like that and then go on to continue to perform and be successful because they have someone who's like, you know, what are you doing?
You're right, exactly.
Yeah, so and it makes the Marilyns and the Judy Garlands that much more tragic because they just would have taken one person to be like, you know, you're not in a good place right now.
Really, though, because I feel like Marilyn had quite a few people around her, especially, you know, her husbands, to be like...
To me, look, I wasn't there, clearly, but, you know, you felt like...
Do you think it was, like, codependent?
Well, I think there was a little bit of that, and I think there was a little bit of enabling people, and then it's like, well, she's Marilyn, we're going to let her do what she wants, you know?
Yeah.
And it's also, look, we're talking about an era where people really didn't understand addiction.
They didn't.
You know, I mean...
They didn't understand a lot.
they didn't understand how to talk to each other.
They didn't understand how to have a person of color in this film, because there was.
I did point out that there were a couple, but to be fair, yeah, I mean there were not. It's White Christmas.
It was
in many
white.
ways.
It was White Christmas.
Look, they went to Vermont in 1954.
I
what do you
know,
want?
but still.
No.
In terms of people of color,
Yes.
did you recognize some of the performers, in particular, George Shakiris?
I don't know. I certainly didn't.
West Side Story. I just butchered his last name, but West Side Story. He was the dancer guy.
The main
sharks. The main shark guy.
So the guy who sings Maria, is he that guy?
No,
that's the
main
Jets.
shark.
All right, I don't know.
Oh, you never saw West
No,
Side
I have.
Story?
I just don't remember it that well.
The main shark. He's gonna pick him up.
Yeah, well, thank you, Ryan.
So he was in the sequence where Rosemary was singing about how love did her wrong.
Yeah, which
and he appeared on screen, like turned around and looked, and I was like, that's the guy from West Side Story. That's him, yeah, with the red jacket. You probably don't recognize him, but he was in it.
The interesting thing that I thought was that every club that they performed in, this guy
was before he got big.
Well, yeah, but the guy who like ran every club, it looked like the same actor.
You don't recognize him?
I mean, I do now that you say him. I mean, the jacket helps probably.
Yes.
But I did not notice that's who it was. So in the time that it was released, the film was successful, which is not the case for a film like It's a Wonderful Life. You know, I mean, its opening weekend, it made $500,000, which is huge for 1954. And its actual gross was about $1 million. It was $928,298. I don't have that adjusted for inflation, but it's a lot.
It's the highest grossing musical of all time.
Really?
Yeah, that's what I have written here.
I guess
making
it's
it the top moneymaker of 1954 by a wide margin and the highest grossing musical film of all time.
I
don't know about that.
I find that hard to believe, only in that it's a Christmas film. So you can't, you know, look, movies used to stick around in the theaters and then you'd re-release them and re-release them and re-release them. But something like Wizard of Oz, you'd watch throughout the year. And I mean, I would say that that's a musical. There's enough songs in it. Maybe their definition is different because of how many songs are in it or not.
This is Ryan in the booth, by the way. I'm looking
Hello,
it
Ryan.
up. Hi. I'm looking it up right now. I haven't found Adjusted for Inflation quite yet, but if we're counting musical, it was actually this year's Lion King. I think actually broke the record.
Just broke it.
But I'm looking for Adjusted for Inflation. I'll report back. I have to imagine that even that West Side Story we were talking about earlier is
West Side
on there.
Story. Oh, thanks, Bernardo. That's what
Bernardo.
It was the highest grossing musical of that year.
Of that year, okay.
Well, that would make sense.
Well, that would make sense.
And look, that's probably a year where there were like 10 big budget musicals, if it, just based on nothing. I'm just guessing that. So what did you think sort of about some of the visuals of the film? I mean, just
that's what I thought that was the best part.
Yeah.
I have this quote here from it looks like it's from the New York Times. It says, director Michael Curtiz has made this picture look good. It's too bad that it doesn't hit the eardrums and the funny bone with equal force. That's kind of how I felt about it. It looked wonderful. The songs, for the most part, were okay. But the story was severely lacking. And, I guess you just don't really expect too much from Christmas movies. You just want everybody to have a happy ending. You want it to be about love and family, and that's really it. So I think for the most part, especially people back then, they were just sort of happy to watch something that had Bing in it and some song and dance numbers. And those song and dance numbers, in particular the dancing, was top notch.
Yeah, the dancing, yeah, I agree.
I really
all
enjoyed
that performance was great.
But the story, I mean, when I watch things, even musicals, there are no exception. You still, with the music, with the dancing, with the singing, you still should have a strong story to back it up. And I didn't think the story was that great.
Look, you would still find this in the movies, but I just want to make sure I just did the math correctly. So we were talking about just some of the optics. So Bing Crosby, when they fall in love, whatever age they are, as long as they're old enough to consent, obviously, you got to say that in this day and age, but it's true. And you just sort of feel like, oh yeah, I mean, it was like,
guarantee you they wouldn't have made Rosemary the star of this if she were in her 50s too.
Oh no!
Gotta say that.
Yeah, I'm sure. Right? No, it's
sexism.
She would have, if Rosemary Clooney were in her 50s, she would have been running the hotel. Yeah, she would have been that lady.
She would have been that girl.
Yeah,
lady, I should say.
Yes, you're right, that lady. But really, so I mean, it's interesting that he just looks so old.
He does.
And I mean, he stuck around long enough that
his backstory. Do you read up on him?
I mean, I remember things that came out about his private life later. Yeah,
yeah. I was
not Dad of the Year.
Not Dad of the Year.
Not Dad of the Year. Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't know any of that about him. I had no idea.
Which you can still enjoy a movie even after, or you already didn't enjoy it. But that's not going to help you seek out more Bing Crosby movies.
No, I can understand. I mean, this is something that I fight with people regularly in terms of Michael Jackson. That's another.
But look,
we need to separate the artist from the personal life.
But if someone else can't, then it's like,
but if you can't, then fine.
Then for you, don't. But
other people can and will.
If my workout mix has Beat It on it, you don't judge me for it, all right?
He did wonderful music, and I'm always going to love his music.
Right.
I'm always going to love him as a performer.
But interesting
personal
tidbit,
life, that's another issue.
You know what? Even if there were none of those allegations ever came to light, he was always weird.
He was always weird.
1948, Bing Crosby, polls in America declared him the most admired man alive, ahead of Jackie Robinson and the Pope. So
wow.
He
had some pull.
Yeah, that's how beloved he was, outside of his home. But that's how beloved he was out there. And, I mean, look, he lived until 1977, and the books about him weren't written until the 80s. Because I remember like Saturday Night Live sketches about like what a bad dad he was, and stuff like that. But it's like, because I think in his lifetime,
did those come out after the books came out or before?
No, this was at the time that the books came out. As far as I can tell, it was like new revelations, or maybe the worst ones came out about 10 years after he died. So he's right up there with somebody like Bob Hope and Jimmy Stewart in terms of like in this time frame, everybody loved him. Sinatra, people liked him.
But Jimmy was a great guy.
Yeah, of all the people I said,
my mom loved him.
Jimmy might be the only one who's actually a nice guy. But they just people loved movie stars, and you could look like Bing Crosby, but if you had that voice, it didn't matter that you looked like him. In any case, so. You did not feel strong, warm feelings about this movie.
Well, let's stop talking about how much I didn't think that it was that great. Let's talk about why you thought it was great.
Why I thought it was better than you, because I didn't think it was great. I thought that it worked really well.
I think it was great.
No, I didn't think it was great, So I think that basically it works, on the farce level that something like Some Like It Hot does, where you're just like, oh, okay, it's just sort of this like nonsense story. And then this being a musical, it is just to get you from point A, from song A to song B to song C to song D. And all the songs were written by Irving Berlin. And I'd say most of the songs were great. There weren't anywhere I was like, all right. But, I didn't need to hear Sisters 3 times.
No.
But
apparently it was written so poorly that they spent even more money to come back and rewrite it. And
wow.
this is the finished product.
With the film or just
film.
the songs? Okay, yeah.
During the period of time where they were trying to figure out casting and Bing was off and, they didn't, that's when they they're like, this is not very good.
This is not very good. But look, a musical, look, even like not your best Broadway shows, but a good, like average Broadway show, it's not always great. Like the stuff that's like, it's just like, for me personally, it's always weird when people break out into song. I'm just like, oh, why don't you just have a conversation instead of sing about your feelings? But the in between stuff doesn't have to be great for a movie to still be like, oh, that's fun. But no, I mean, this is, if I want to watch a Christmas movie,
I'll watch Home Alone and I'll watch Macaulay Culkin sing White Christmas into the mirror.
Doesn't he? I believe he also sings the Chipmunks Christmas song as well, doesn't he? Or that's not in the first one, is it?
No, I'm talking the first.
She's like,
the original.
Oh yeah, she only likes the first.
The OG. No, I like the second one.
Something you have to learn about her.
No, I like the second one too.
She doesn't like sequels.
But the first one, Home Alone, is amazing.
Yeah, I only like Home Alone 3. No, I'm just kidding. It's just for fun.
Oh no.
Just for fun, I say stuff like that. So yeah, no, look, I thought that it worked for what it was, but what it was is not what I'm usually looking for in a movie.
Right.
Like I think your classic musical movies are the ones that are based on stage shows. Like, just 2 examples, Sound of Music and like South Pacific, Rodgers and Hammerstein, those sort of musicals, they work because they were developed for the stage. And then it's like, if you make it right, you're just like, oh, so we'll take this story, but then we'll go outside and it'll be in a cool setting, And it's like, yeah, that's all you need to do. Don't mess around with it, So I think developing the movie musical, it doesn't really happen that much anymore, I mean, and when it does, it's probably something like Moulin Rouge, where they're using contemporary pop songs mixed into it. They're not writing songs only for it. So it's really just in that way, it's another way where it's really of a bygone era. It's not the kind of movie that they've made in a very long time.
Is it still considered one of the best Christmas movies of all time, if not the?
I mean, this is considered that, but I think that that's a matter of personal preference. And for those of you watching the archive version, leave your comments and let us know, what is your personal favorite. So there's different ways to look at favorites too. There's like, for me, I'm like, in so many ways, It's a Wonderful Life is the best one. But I'll probably watch, Muppet Christmas Carol more often myself, or. For me, it's probably more TV specials because I saw those more as a kid, things that would be repeated like on HBO, like something that's also from the Muppet performers, Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas, which I saw like thousands of times or hundreds of times as a child and still many times as an adult. So there's a lot of stuff like that. But, there's like the classics that it's classic because it's a classic. And then there's movies that are just like, oh, that just makes me feel that. And for you, it's Home Alone.
For me, it's Home Alone,
Yeah. So, and, it's
the most violent of all the Christmas movies.
And it's become such a point of contention for people to make the case that Die Hard is a Christmas movie, but Die Hard is very much a Christmas movie. It happens, I believe, on Christmas Eve, the entire film. So, and there's, you have music throughout it that's Christmas. And I, a number of times, watched it at Christmas. So that's probably my most watched Christmas film. But let us know what you think. Now, Alexa will be out stuffing stockings and checking lists twice,
or working through the Christmas season.
Seeing who's naughty and nice. This is all part of your job.
Right.
You check your list twice.
Correct.
So you won't be with me next week, and so we'll do a little bit of a variation on this one day next week. My friend Rachel Goodman and I will be with me, and we'll be talking about the Muppet Christmas Carol. So look for that. But we'll be back in January, and I'll let you know what next week we'll be watching. Alexa, where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Alexa Cappy, Cappy.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at ChristianDMZ. And Merry Christmas to everyone.
Merry Christmas, everyone. I won't see you next week, but I'll see you soon.
Yeah, and she'll say Merry January to you.
Yes,
at that time.
I will.
All right, thanks
later.
everyone. We'll talk to you soon.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Popcorn Talk Network or its owners or principals.